This is Next Radio.
With Broadcast Bionics, innovative solutions for creative people.
Alright, so hello, my name's Dan, this is Libby, we're from BBC Research and Development, and we're here today to give you a little overview of a side project we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. Its aim is to enable us to quickly prototype internet-connected radio devices. And we've done that in order to answer a question we've been thinking about a lot at the BBC, which is what's the future of radio and radio devices? Now, we know a lot of other people have been looking into this area as well, and Libby's got a few examples of what radio devices of the future could look like.
So perhaps it's a modular radio device, like this rather lovely collaboration between Berg and BBC R&D called Alinda. So here you've got a normal DAB radio, but you can add further components on it to give it different functionality. Or perhaps it's not a separate radio at all, but an application that you run on your desktop or on your phone, like UK Radio Player. Or perhaps perhaps it's a smart radio that senses its environment and changes the content in order to respond to that, like a perceptive radio from our colleagues up in BBC R&D North, Ian Forrester. Or perhaps it's more about the physical appearance and the interactivity, like this lovely Lego radio from MX Labs in Switzerland.
So clearly there's a lot of good ideas out there, but the fact of the matter is we still don't know what the future of radio looks like. And on top of that, it's time-consuming and expensive to find out. So it's with that in mind that we'd like to introduce our own approach. And we'd like to do that by telling you about a radio that we've always wanted to build for ourselves. The Arches Avoider. Now, don't get us wrong. We all love Radio 4. If we had an office radio, it would be glued to Radio 4 all day. But we have to admit that some elements of the schedule are more appreciated than others. And what we'd like to do is to be able to personalize the experience for ourselves. So here's a sketch that we came up with at a hardware hack day that we ran last April. And I think it explains the concept pretty well. The idea is that when a program you don't like comes on, you simply hit the button. You then get tuned to a program that maybe you'd enjoy a little bit more. Once the program that you're trying to avoid is finished, it then returns you back to the original station and your original programming. So here's an original high-end concept that we came up with first of all. We like to call it the slice of amberage. So how this works is that as the Arches approaches, the farmer rises above the horizon. If you decide that you don't want to listen to the Arches this time, you simply bash him back down into the station and he will change the program for you. This is a second, more generic panic button-based approach. You don't necessarily have to avoid the Arches with this. You could avoid Moneybox Live, for example. This next iteration has all the components packed into a single box, so it's starting to look more like a radio, albeit a radio that's maybe been found in a bin somewhere. And this is where we are today, our latest Arches Avoider Mark IV, and I think we have a little clip of it in action.
Back to just now, and can Caroline leave Grey Gables behind? Must be the Archers.
Keep it locked. BBC Radio 1 Extra. Showtime
now.
So we had a certain set of behaviours and functionality that we were really interested in making. But it turns out whenever you talk to people about what their radio should look like, they always have loads of great ideas as well. So I just want a radio that plays the proms. I just want a radio that just plays cricket. I want a radio that only plays the Archers. And so these next three slides are some ideas that came from a little discussion at our local Bristol Hackspace. So this one here is a time travel radio. So the dial on the left, you pick your genre. The dial on the right, you pick how far back in time you want it to be, and then you just set it going. This one here owes quite a debt to the Arches Avoider, but is a little bit different. So you've got the Not This Now button, and then you've got the Never Play This Again and Banish It From My Radio button. This one here, you pick a point on what Michael Smethurst has called the Rethian curve between learned and exciting. So let's say from In Our Time to Tim Westwood Show, something like that, and then just set it going.
All right, so what we found is when you talk to people about this idea of being able to create a radio for yourself, there's an idea for a future radio in everyone. So the question comes up is, how do we know when we're onto a winner? We want to be able to experiment more and guess less by quickly assembling prototypes and trying them out in the real world. So here's a dozen or so wrong radios. If we iterate on them quickly, we can easily change direction when they stop shaping up. We can evolve quickly and prune the ideas that don't work.
So for this kind of experimentation, it's not just about the physical functionality. but it's also about the behaviour of the radio. And to iterate that quickly, we need software as well as the hardware. So we need Radiodan, we think. So Radiodan is the software prototyping platform that we've been working on. And it's inspired by these prototypes, but also gets its requirements from them as well. So it's an open source software radio platform. It plays live radio streams, but also MP3s and similar things like that. It connects to Wi-Fi. You can add physical controls to it, like buttons and dials. It's got a web server built in so that you can give it more detailed, fine-grained control over there. And it's easy to program. So I don't know if you can see this very well, but it's basically the Archer's Avoider in 10 lines of code. So you set up a playlist for Radio 1 and another one for Radio 4. You set the 4-1 running. You listen for a button press, and when that's pressed, you play Radio 1, basically. You sleep for 5 seconds. 5 seconds isn't long enough to avoid the Archers. I've tried.
So what we found is that this software is quite flexible, and you can run it on any number of devices or even host it online as a website. But we've really found value in putting it onto an embedded device. This is a great example of an embedded device. It's called a Raspberry Pi. And if you can't see it at the back, I'm sorry. I'm not surprised. It's about 10 centimeters square. But it includes all the components that you'd expect of a computer. It's got wired internet. It's got onboard sound card, particularly useful if you're creating radios. And it's even got onboard graphics card if you wanted to create visual interfaces or add screens to it. The really great thing about the Pi is that there's an enormous developer community around it. And what that means is that there's a ton of free open source software that we can use as a basis for our product. And it's really cheap as well. So this basic Pi will give you all the really basic elements you need to create a decent emulation of a radio. But there's lots of other bells and whistles you can add as well. There's a USB Wi-Fi dongle to connect to the wireless internet, an additional high-quality sound card, all of £2 worth. That'll enable you to play music in slightly higher fidelity or even play an additional audio stream. A high-end, laser-cut, etched Archer's Avoider branded box. We are selling them in the foyer. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can use any old box. This is a tea box that Libby used for her Radio Democracy project. Other brands of tea are available. But what we found is that even for most advanced radio ideas that we come up with, we can pretty much build them for around 50 quid or so. And what that means is we can produce all of these funded out of our own pockets. We don't need to look for outside help. And because so many of these components are reusable, we can easily take 2 bits that we like off 2 different radios and push them together to make one.
So what we're hoping is that we're lowering the barrier for people to experiment with this. Initially us, but then hopefully hobbyists and other people. So you don't have to worry about Wi-Fi setup, buttons, dials, playing audio, just the normal sort of thing that gets you going. And then you can really focus on what's unique about the radio that you want to build. And radio can be the box in the corner still, but it can do something completely different if that's what you want. So this is very far from being a completed project. We're documenting the work and working in the open so that when we make mistakes, we can share them with other people. There's just a few people at the moment trying to experiment and work on it. So it's very early days, but we would just like to say thank you, particularly to the people from Team Radiodan who couldn't be here, which is Chris Lewis and Andrew Nicolau, and all these people from whom we've benefited absolutely loads by talking to them and by being inspired by what they've done. And thank you very much as well.
That was really interesting actually to see how things start from sort of small ideas. And I suppose the test will be, won't it, whether we see something like that actually developing or sort of coming to fruition in the future.
I know there are people there who are going to get innovative and creative with that. You know, there are people here today I know that are going to do that. People who like the radio player, develop the radio player apps and that kind of thing.
And it just twigs off things in your brain or kind of conversations with other people from the industry that you maybe wouldn't have had sat at your desk with your colleagues.
This is Next Radio.
With Broadcast Bionics, innovative solutions for creative people.